This is the Norris Group's Real Estate Investor Radio Show, the award-winning show dedicated to thought leaders shaping the real estate industry and local experts revealing their insider tips to succeed in an ever-changing real estate market. Hosted by author, investor, and hard money lender, Bruce Norris.
Hi, thank you for joining us. My name is Bruce Norris, and with us once again is Rick Solis. Rick, as we discussed before, has been retired for a couple of years from investing and appraising and enjoying the relaxing life. So, Rick, welcome back.
Thank you.
You mentioned a couple of things that not everybody does or maybe takes advantage of as much. You did a lot of the investing in the retirement accounts that you had. So what type of retirement account did you have? And was it real beneficial to do it the way you did it?
For me, I have a self-directed IRA, and I found out about those in probably my late 20s. So I've always saved. Like I read a book in the early 90s, and it was called Wealth Without Risk by Charles Givens. And there was a little piece in that book, and it said, IRAs, you can pull your money out anytime without paying a penalty, because you always have to pay a penalty if you pull out money out of your IRA before you're 59. And so I studied that, and that little term, and it's almost nobody knows about it. Even my CPA, he had to study it, but it's called substantially equal periodic payments. And basically what it says is your IRA, you can pull out money anytime, and it's kind of annuitized. It's based on your life. So the IRS has a table, and say you're 40 years old, and they have a table that says, well, if you're 40, you got about 50 years left. And based on that, you can divide your IRA by 50 years, which is about 2%, and that's what you can pull out. But once you start that, you can't stop until you're 59. So if you start that at 40, you have to pull out that 2%, and the 2% increases. So next year, you're going to 49-year lifespan, so you divide your balance by 49. And you have to pull that out. Maybe that's 2.1% or something. But you keep going. And as your balance of your IRA increases and your age, your lifespan decreases, that percentage gets a little bigger each time. So when I'm 25, I'm thinking, you know what? All I need in there is $1 million. And I can pull out, I'm 25. I have my house paid for. And I get $1 million in there. And I can pull out 2%. That's $20 grand, I'm debt free at that point. I can $1,500 a month. I'll live like a king. So that was the goal. I thought, why would I invest anywhere but my IRA? Because everywhere else, when I sell, I always have to give away at least a third and that's if it's long-term investment, a third in taxes.
Right.
If it's short-term, you might be giving 40% away in taxes. But I thought, if I just did my IRA, and this way I won't spend the profits, and I'm getting a tax write-off when I'm putting money in my IRA. So if I put 10 grand in my, my IRA, well, at one point it was a 401k, but if, say I'm putting in 10 grand in there, I'm getting a 40% write-off almost between the federal and the state. I'm almost getting 4 grand back in a tax write-off. So that's the path I went. So I started saving in that. And initially I started investing in stocks, and 4 or 5 years later, I hadn't made a penny on the stocks. Like I was buying and selling and doing mutual funds, and none of that worked. So that's when I learned about self-directed IRAs. So I moved my money to Equity Trust Company and opened up a self-directed IRA in there. That was probably in the late 90s. And I started buying notes, like second mortgages. And I was buying, at the time, I bumped into an investor that bought non-performing seconds in late 90s. And he was buying them at 10, 20 cents on the dollars from the finance companies like Avco, Beneficial. Basically, those companies would lend people almost 100 to 125% of the value of their house. And if the people didn't make payments, those finance companies wouldn't do anything. They wouldn't foreclose. So they're making $125,000 or 125% loan to value loan in 1995.
Yeah.
And 1997, the people stopped paying. In 1998, my friend walks in there like, hey, you got a $40,000 mortgage, I'll give you $8 grand for that. And he gets that loan in 1999. He starts foreclosing. Well, between 1995, when the house was worth $150, and 1999, maybe it's worth $225 at that point.
Yeah, that was a nice stretch.
Now they have equity. Well, he was running out of these $8,000 chunks to buy more loans. So he would he would borrow money from me, and he would pay me 1% a week. So he'd say, hey, if you lend me $8,000, I'll pay you back $10,000 in 2 months. And so initially I was lending him money. I was getting credit lines to lend this guy money. And eventually he told me what he was doing, because I was almost like a loan shark to this guy.
Yeah, you're talking about hard money.
But he was borrowing $8,000 from me, and then he was foreclosing, and 4 months later he's getting a check for $50,000. So he could never borrow the $8,000 though. So he was doing tons of these. Eventually I was like, hey, why don't you just sell some of these? So instead of buying one for $8,000, maybe he'd buy two for $8,000. He'd sell me one for $12,000, and then he put up $4,000 to buy the second one, and then he showed me how to do it. So I started foreclosing on those and getting those back, and then I would turn around and sell them, and this was all through my IRA. And what happened was, about 3 or 4 in, I started foreclosing on a guy, and he brought me current. And I was like, damn, I was so bummed out, because I didn't want this loan, you know. I paid him, I don't remember the exact number, it was a long time ago, but let's say it was a $50,000 loan. I paid $15,000 for it, and he had $3,000 in back payments and $1,000 foreclosure fees. He writes me a check for $4,000, and now he's sending me a $300 payment each month, and I'm thinking, well, what am I going to do with this? But I thought about that $300, and I thought, wait a minute.
The yield's not too bad.
The yield's not too bad, because now I'm only in this for $12,000, and I'm collecting $3,600 a year. But I'm also thinking $300 is about what I make doing an appraisal when I'm all done with my overhead. And I'm doing 40 appraisals a month at this point. Now I only have to do 39 appraisals, and I'm already hating this. And so I'm like, okay, well, now I only have to do 39. And then I do another one, and I'm getting a $300 check. Oh, now I'm at 38. So my goal in the late 90s was I get enough of these that I don't have to do any more appraisals. And so that's what I did. And these loans, by the time 2001, 2002 came around, they started refinancing. And then I'm getting full payoffs on these things, and I didn't have to do any work. And I'm like, wow, I paid 12, and now I'm getting 50, and I got $3,600 a year in payments, or you know, usually the loans were about 12% interest, so maybe I was getting $4,000 or $5,000 a year in interest, and I was like, this is genius. I mean, that's what I was doing, and my IRA balance was doubling every 12 months. And I did that for 6 or 7 years, and it was just the sweet spot from 98 to 2006. And the only reason I ever started flipping houses and buying and selling was so I could get more money to buy more loans. I never wanted to be in the house flipping business. I wanted the loans.
Ah, okay.
So, and when you buy a loan, you can't take that loan, and I tried. You can't take that to a bank, and once that guy's performing, I get a $50,000 loan. You can't go in there and say, hey, can I borrow $10,000 on this loan, or $20,000? And no. You have to. They have no idea. Nobody can grasp that concept.
The hypothecation of a note.
It's illegal. Like what you're doing is illegal. You can't own this loan, and yeah, nobody would hypothecate it. So I had to borrow money on credit lines and flip houses and do other stuff to buy these loans, and so eventually the availability of loans dried up, and then the 2006 and 7 and 8 market just kind of wiped all that away. So then I went back to houses. Well, by the end of the housing thing, I hated houses, and I hated tenants, and I hated fixing and flipping and realtors and multiple offers and canceled escrows, and I just didn't like any of that. So as I sold my houses, I thought, you know what? Let me go back to loans. So I go back to loans, and I start looking for loans, and wow, it's a whole different field now. Well, now there was loans that were made in 2007, and maybe a house sold for $500,000, and they had a $400,000 first, a $100,000 second, and they didn't make payments on that for 5 years. A lot of these will have that $400,000 second with maybe $200,000 in back payments. They got them modified, and the lenders waived all those back payments and lowered they maybe got this modified in like 2014, and by then the house is worth way less than what they owed, so the lender would lower the balance of that first down to maybe $300,000, and they lower the rate to 2%. And now this guy's PITI payment's $1,000 a month. Well, there's this pile of seconds, and there was people buying these things up for pennies on the dollar. Like a $100,000 loan, they buy for $1,000, and they would put that in a drawer.
Oh my gosh!
And they would just sit on that. And then once the first was modified, look, oh, wait a minute, and this is 2013, 14, 15, and now prices are going up.
Yeah.
Now that first is $300,000, and maybe that house is worth $500,000. And so these companies went and modified these seconds and got these people paying. And Now maybe this $100,000 loan is, they've waived the back interest, and they've lowered his interest rate. So maybe now he's paying $900 a month on a $100,000 loan with a $300,000 first, and maybe his house is worth $600,000 or $700,000. Well, these guys that bought these loans, they don't want to sit on this loan forever, so they will sell this loan, and usually you can get those for 60 to 75 cents on the dollar. So I've got all this money in my IRA, and I see this $100,000 loan for sale, and I can pick it up for 60, and it's paying $600 a month in a payment. Well, I took all the profits from those houses and started buying these loans, and it's all in my IRA. So I buy the loan, then I get the place I like to buy them from. There's a website that lists all these loans for free. It's fciexchange.com, and you can go on there, and there's thousands of loans for sale. You have to dig through 1,000 to find the one good one, but there's a good one in there. And once you buy that loan, it puts you in contact with the guy that's got 1,000 more of those loans. And so I go on there and I buy a loan from that. And then after I buy the loan, I put that with a servicing company that collects the check. They charge me $15 to $20. They collect a check from the borrower, and then they send the money to my retirement account. And now I have an asset that takes none of my effort, and I just get a check each month, and it goes right to my retirement account, tax-free, until I pull the money out of my IRA. So most of my investing is that. I do that kind of thing in my IRA, and then I started pulling money out of my IRA a few years ago. Well, actually in 2008 I started, because all my investments got wiped out. So I started doing that early withdrawal thing, and I've been doing that for about 8 or 9 years, but now my IRA's got to the point where I can almost live off that. It's covering about 70% of my overhead. So that's what I do. I just manage my IRA. I buy the loans. I also invest in bonds and stocks and other things, but most of it is loans. And that's what I do. Now,
you said that after 2006, there weren't any of those loans. And then, so the downturn, you didn't get hurt by loans that you had, because it seems like you probably didn't have them.
There weren't those kind of loans. There were other loans, and that's what wiped me out. So a guy would have a $250,000 house in Hesperia, and he had, say, $175 first, and he would get a $30,000 second and pay 12% interest, and a hard money lender would be selling that second. I bought those seconds.
Oh, okay.
And those worked really good for 2005 and 6, but by 2007,
they were worthless.
Did not work out well.
So
even houses that were worth $250 and there's a $120 first, and I did that $30,000 second, so it's still 60% loan to value.
Yeah,
those houses dropped down to $100,000 so fast, and I did a ton of that stuff, and I aggressively kept investing the whole time, thinking that prices were only going to drop 20 or 30%. And a lot of the areas I was investing in dropped way more than that. A lot of them dropped over 50.
Yes. Okay. Are you concerned about the timing of any of the next down cycle, as far as the severity of it? And, when you're investing, right now you're investing, and we've been going the other way price-wise for, 9 years?
I am concerned because I absolutely know for sure another recession's coming. I just don't know when.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a month, a year, or 5 years. The loans I'm buying now, though, the one I just did was, I don't know the exact numbers, but roughly here's what it is. The first is 120. The second was 44, and it's a 6% second, and I bought the second for 34.
Okay.
Houses in Compton, and the house is worth 450. Now, if that Compton house drops more than 50%, then I'm in trouble. That'll be the first time Compton's dropped more than 50% in the history of Compton. So I don't think that could happen again, but maybe it could.
Yeah, but we'd have to have as severe or
it would
worse.
have to be worse than 2008. And if it happens, it happens. But I think her first 120, 130, house worth 450, and my loan's 44, so she's under 175, and her house would have to drop from 450 to below 175 for me to get hurt.
Who was the owner of the note at 6%? Was that just a standard lender? and somehow
these are all bank loans.
Right. Why did they get rid of that loan? I'm just curious.
What I suspect happened with that, and I don't know, I could find out, but what I suspect happened was she stopped making payments on that second for a couple years, and someone sold that loan off for 50 cents on the dollar. They bought that, and then they started foreclosing on her, and I bet she brought it current. Because this is an original loan that was made in like 2006, and it has not been modified. So, and that's rare. I've not bought a lot of loans like that. Most of the ones I bought have been modified. But I like it because she's been there 12 years. I drove by her house. It looks great. I checked tile. There hasn't been any additional loans since 2006. She hasn't been in foreclosure on the first since 2006. And she's taking great care of her house. And that's what I like. Somebody that's lived there a long time. They're taking great care of their house. And they're current on their first with a lot of equity. And I mean, the return on that is not great. I mean, it's probably 9%. But that's almost as close as you can get to a guaranteed 9%. The chances of her house dropping below 175, to me, that's about the same as General Motors filing bankruptcy again. I mean, it's that level. So if I'm buying a bond from GM and I'm worried about that getting wiped out, that's about the same level as her house in Compton. The only things I can think of that could really hit me in Compton is massive earthquake wipes out her house, or huge fire and she doesn't have fire insurance. It lapses, and that would be the only two things.
Okay.
And I don't chase fire insurance policies. The second, I assume the first is handling that, because I like these things to be no effort on my part.
Okay. You ever get a chance to buy first, or is all the yield in seconds?
You can buy first, but you usually can't get a discount, and you're getting like 6 or 7%. And I usually try to stay closer to 10 to 12%. Mm-hmm. I used to get 15 to 20, and that's when I was getting greedy, and most of that stuff got wiped out. If you stay between like 8 and 12%, you're pretty safe. First, don't yield that much. And I like the discount. I'm really in for, I like I got this loan $10,000 off. That's what I'm chasing.
Okay.
I like the $10,000.
A little bonus at the end.
Yeah, but don't think most of these people are going to refi and pay me out.
Correct.
I think most of these are going to go the whole distance.
And what is the distance usually in length of time? Is it amortized for?
Yeah, a lot of these are 25 years.
Okay.
I think she's got 15 to 20 years left on her loan.
Okay.
2006, so I think hers was a 30-year loan. I think she's going to 2036.
So you're really trying to set up a model where you don't have a lot to do.
I have nothing to do.
Okay.
I do the work up front. So I spend my time looking for deals, and the cash flow from the loans coming in or something paying off, when that shows up, I'm like, okay, I got to go find something else to replace that. But otherwise, no, most of my time is trying to figure out how to simplify my life and not have a lot of headaches.
Okay. The note you mentioned is in Compton, but that's in California. You have notes that are in other states. How did you pick those states?
I used to buy all the states before, not all, but probably 15 states in like the early 2000s, and some of those didn't work out well, so I've stayed away from those. The ones that I really like, my favorites are Arizona, California, and Oregon. I used to love Washington, but now you have to have special licensing for Washington, and it's just not feasible. I really like Nevada, and I probably would buy more in Nevada, but I need to understand those foreclosure laws better, because I know they changed stuff a whole bunch, so I'd want to know that. I've done stuff in Texas, and I like the foreclosures are short in Texas, but houses do not go up in value in Texas. They just seem to sit.
They have in the last couple of years, and it's a very unusual event.
I haven't checked, but I wouldn't do Texas again. I just bought my first loan in Florida, and that one makes me really nervous. This guy had been there a long time. He has a great pay history, but the Florida one I almost regretted buying that one afterwards. But he had a really long, stable period of paying, and I'm hoping that works out well, but I can see that not working out well.
Now, why are you afraid of that?
Well, I talked to your son about the Chinese drywall, so that freaks me out. And then I'm worried about the hurricanes. And then I'm reading about sinkholes just pop up and swallow stuff. And then I was in Florida, and I love that state.
Do you want to sell that note at a discount?
I do not, but I bought it at a discount. But what I've learned about loans is you don't know what you don't know about other states. You have no idea.
Yeah.
And every state is completely different. And you just don't know.
As a lender, I mean, I'm really glad that Greg has flipped like 75 homes. because we had to learn some of that the hard way. Oh, we own a Chinese drywall home. What does that mean? That means 40 grand.
Yeah, that's not a thing here.
Yeah. Also turtles.
I didn't know about that.
I didn't either. I found out that the hard way too. I was selling the remaining lots in the tract, and there was 3 turtle holes.
So what does that mean?
Well, to an amateur, what it meant was the guy that was on site. He says, "Well, I know how to deal with that." So he put a little tub in the dirt with water and attracts the turtles, and he moved the turtles to a safe place.
That's illogical.
It sounds logical, yes. It's a felony, however. And anyway, so I had to back into how to do it right, which we did. It's because the builder said, you have to get permits and all that stuff. So after the fact, we did all that and it was kind of done by very experienced people who would have done it from beginning the same way. So it kind of was okay. But anyway, that's exactly that. There's a guy, there's like 3 people that are known for being a receptor of those turtles. So you have a turtle problem.
And you just call them and they come pick up your turtle?
Well, the stages in between. So you call the turtle removal expert, and then they move the turtle to this guy that gets $1,000 a turtle. He's made millions of dollars being the receiver of turtles.
Well, I traveled to Florida for the first time, and I was very impressed with that state, and I want to do more in Florida, and that's why I bought this loan, because usually I won't bother learning or dealing with that until I have some chips invested. So
okay.
I plan to do more stuff in Florida.
Just one more question about it. Is it like an auction for the note, or is it just up for sale at a certain price?
Yeah, it's almost like eBay. It's just there.
Okay.
The guy, this loan I bought for 44, I think the guy wanted 38 or something.
But there's not a time bidding process where they got 5 more minutes.
No, it's just sitting up there, and usually there are 80 cents on the dollar, and you could submit a bid for 70 cents on the dollar, and you do a little negotiating back and forth, and they act as an escrow company, because there's a lot of things that go wrong if you don't know what you're doing buying notes. So there's a lot of stuff, and they kind of walk you through all that.
Okay.
And they charge, I think the buyer pays $350 and the seller pays $350, and once they have all the documents and everything looks in order, and they make sure the assignment change is all in order, then you wire the money to the seller, and they send you the original file.
Okay.
It's just a genius. And then they'll collect the payment for you.
Favorite newsletter? Last minute and a half?
I like a lot of blogs. So my favorite
blogs
is Mr. Money Mustache.
Mr. Money Mustache.
Love that guy. And then The Wealthy Accountant. And these are all basically, there's a community called the FI community, and it's a huge community. There's a massive thing that falls in, and basically it's a financially independent community.
Okay.
There's nothing to do with real estate, and those are the ones I like. And the Mr. Money Mustache retired at 30, and
30.
Yeah, I mean he just worked like a madman, saved 60%, 70% of his money, and within 5 years he just quit. He had enough, and he didn't have to work anymore. And I noticed a lot of these people did something called code. They did coding. I don't know what that is, but it's something to do with, Aaron probably knows. It's something to do with software or something. They're coders. And
okay.
So they make lots of money, but they don't like their jobs, and they save their money, and they retire early. And
they're through with coding and through with anything else.
And they're just traveling the world and going to concerts and just watching Netflix and working on their house and all the stuff I like doing.
Do you read books?
I read books, but they're different kind of books. They're RVing and just early retirement. And
yeah, it's interesting. You got to figure out how to retire and be happy, too.
Yeah. That's not that hard.
Okay. Rick, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it very much.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
For more information on hard money loans and upcoming events with the Norris Group, check out thenorrisgroup.com. For information on passive investing with trust deeds, visit tngtrustdeeds.com.